Call to order the Public Works Committee, Thursday, February 28, 2019. Roll call.
Mr. Abshire?
Here.
Mr. Andrepont?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnum?
Here.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Landry is out of town. Mr. Latour?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Trimmy?
Here.
President White?
Here.
Chairman McMillan is out of town as well. Vice Chair Ms. Mayo?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Number 3, consideration of approving an active sale agreement for the Ham Reed Road Extension Project in Ward 3.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 4, consideration of approving a utility and drainage
to
servitude
adopt.
agreement for the Ham Reed Road Extension Project in Ward 3. I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 5, consideration of approving active sale agreements for the Niblet Bluff Road Bridge Replacement and Realignment Project in Ward 7.
Move on.
Second. I
5.
have a motion by Mr. Bears and a second by Ms. Trimming. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 6, consideration of approving a real estate sales agreement for the Calcasieu Parish Transportation Initiative Project in Ward 4. I have a motion by Mr. Farnum and a second by Mr. Bears. Discussion? Mr. Bears.
What is this, what does this all entail, I guess, Mr. Connor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bears. This is part of right-of-way or corridor preservation. Circle K business is vacant right now
Okay.
because they rebuilt across the road, and it came up for sale.
Okay.
And we felt like this was a good opportunity to go in now and buy that piece because of the CPTI program, where we're going to end up improving those intersections. So if we can take advantage of that now, it would save some dollars down the road. So that's what it's about. Now, this is an agreement for the purchase, but this is not actually a buy. We still have to do an appraisal on the property, and we're waiting on an environmental report to come back also. So we haven't settled on any price at this point.
Okay, so that is the building, the building that the land that the building sits on and everything. Okay. That's, I applaud whoever's idea that was, you know, because that's an opportunity right there, and they're not making any land, and you all know how tight it is out there, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Scott.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't they already pull the tanks out of that property? So that'd be one less hurdle we have to cross. I think they did.
Yes.
But that's going to be investigated to make sure there's no leaks.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 7, consideration of acknowledging that the annual
Second.
municipal water pollution prevention MWPP audit has been conducted for sewage district number 11 of wards 3 and 8 wastewater treatment plant. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 8, consideration of approving an amendment to the cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and AECOM Technical Services for the Contraband Bayou Regional Detention Facility Project.
Move on 8. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Andrepont and a second by Mr. Abshire. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 9, consideration
9, all
of
bullets.
authorizing the Director of Public Works to advertise for the following projects. A, drainage improvement of various roads, wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8. B, clearing and snagging of Cayuchi-Cooley lateral KC-L44. C, clearing and snagging of Bayou Arson lateral BA-L47. D, clearing and snagging of Bear Head Creek BHC-L98. And clearing and snagging of Buxton Creek lateral BC-L93. I have a motion by Mr. Latour in all bullets and a second by Mr. Brain. Any discussion? Mr. Bears.
I guess we can start with Mr. Wainwright. This is, it's a lot of big projects. You want to expound on, I guess, the scopes of these projects?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We would. We prepared a few slides to have some of our staff and engineering team here tonight. It's going to show you a few things. But before I get Terry Freelow to the mic to handle that, him and Byron Rocca, I'd like to make a few comments. First off, these are some new styled projects. We've first set, so we are kind of learning as we go through the process. These are some projects that came from the coalition meetings that we've had. Initially, when we were meeting with the superintendents of these districts, and we were asking for projects that they felt like they may not be able to get to, or from a resource standpoint, or whatever. These came to the top of the list. They're good projects. Clearing and snagging is where you just, basically we're going to go up the lateral. We're going to take out any major trees, falls that have fell, anything that's kind of blocking the flow or blocking access up the lateral. It's kind of a light footprint, no digging and or moving of dirt or anything, but we can do these relatively quickly because not much permitting because of the nature of the work. So we have a couple things we want to highlight. We use some very interesting technology. Some local companies here put together some technology, because the hardest part about this type project is quantifying how much work is to be done. These are on major laterals that are pretty natural in their condition, creeks, and hard to access them. You're going to see that in the video that we have for you. Really, ultimately, these projects help us have access to the laterals for bigger and better things. Future inspections, let's make sure they stay open. The ability to get up there and extend our gauge system where we need additional rain gauges in these areas. We're really, when you look at these, there's not roads that cross these laterals where we really need them. Also help us to identify future projects in these areas. So with that, I'm going to let Terry come on up to the mic. He's going to talk a little bit about this, and then probably hand it off to Byron with Byron Associates to give you a little bit more of the detail, show you a few photographs and things of the project.
Terry Freelow, Public Works Department. As Alan mentioned earlier, we met with the gravity drainage boards and we identified these 4 laterals. And before we go to the PowerPoint, it was kind of hard because all the ordinance that you put together, and we was talking about buffer space and the work that needs to be done, these laterals are very important, especially in the west end, Miss Sandy, Bearhead Creek. You know, I live in that area too. A couple floods we have. David Cooley's wanting to get some work done. But we kind of went from simple laterals to hard laterals. You'll see in the video of some interesting information. I'd like to bring Byron Rocca up here tonight from Myers and Associates. He's the engineer that's working with me, and Cody Prochet with Prochet Imagery. He took some drone footage that you'll probably enjoy. Byron.
Thank you. Byron Rocca, Myron Associates. Thank you all for having me this evening. As Terry mentioned earlier, we've got 4 laterals we're looking at around the various parts of the parish. Tonight we have some material, some investigative material that was collected by Porsche Aerial Imagery on the Bayou Arsan lateral. So what you see on the display is the locations of the 4 various projects: Bearhead Creek, Buxton Creek, Bayou Arsan, and Cayuchi Coulee. Those are the 4 we have that we're taking a look at right now. And as Terry mentioned, the idea is to go in, investigate these laterals, identify problematic areas, go in, clean them, rectify them to get water moving again. And these tools that we have can be used as for monitoring capabilities. So we can move on to the PowerPoint now. Okay. So the project scope of work for Bayou Arsan was basically from Hardy Road to Jeff Davis Ward Line and Hecker. The project scope was to develop a maintenance accessible route along the channel for the purposes of performing the project and future maintenance efforts. The project limits is about 15,840 feet, a little over about 3 miles of Bayou Arsan. So these are some of the images that were collected. What we're doing is we decided rather than getting risk individual safety and stuff like that to try and traverse these channels on the bank and map out problematic areas, we came up with a way to utilize drones to map these laterals. And these are some of the images that you can see that we found when we were traversing the lateral. You have trees that have fallen in from the side banks that are blocking drainage. And then what happens is they become a big net. You know, they catch any debris coming down the channel and they just grow, you know, over time. You've got, you know, there you see a refrigerator. You've got all kinds of debris in these laterals that need to be removed. And as you can see, as you go down, there's no accessibility from these areas, you know, it's by boat. So, you know, you've got the bridge, you've got stuff coming in from the side bank there, another tree that fell in. This one's completely blocking the entire channel. This one, when we got to this point, we had to go from an aerial aspect because of the beaver dam. You have a very large beaver dam in the center that's blocking the entire lateral. So one of the aspects of this scope of work is that we're going to try and get trappers in there ahead of the work being done to pull these animals out, basically, and then go in and clean it out so they don't go in and destroy it again, you know, and block it again. Because it doesn't take them very long to plug it up. So the next thing we have is a technology software where we can take the drone data that's geo-referenced and put it in a manner to where it can map out the channel for you on like a Google Earth type imagery. So if you want to pull up the video now, you can go ahead and do so. This is a short video of, as this drone's flying, it's taking hundreds and thousands of still images. So you can map out an entire channel as this drone flies. And what you're looking at here is the deliverable product of that data. So. And it's much clearer when it's in a slower fashion, but, you know, because this is all high-resolution imagery. And the idea is that we map out all these laterals because what you want to do is when you're bidding out these projects, the more information available to the contractors, the more effective and efficient their price is. And so that way they're not throwing contingencies on things they don't know, you know. So with this, we have a bunch of data available to them to where they don't have to guess. You know, a lot of it's identified and you get a better price theoretically at the end of the day. So. And with that, the data that we have to present for tonight, right now I said this was collected from Bayou Arsan. The next one I think we're moving on to from a field investigation standpoint is Bearhead Creek. So we wanted to showcase this for y'all tonight to show what efforts are being taken on these projects. So I open it to any questions anybody may have.
Well, this is right in my neck of the woods, of course, and I just want to thank everyone who's been involved in this effort. I know the Drainage Board had attempted to do something like this probably 15 years ago and never did have the resources or the collaboration with, they were trying to do a little bit further into Jeff Davis Parish and never could come to fruition. And just want to thank y'all very much. And this will definitely do a huge deal for a lot of residents because that water, it ties into another bayou that drains straight into the Calcasieu, so that flow would make a huge difference. Because that's all, you know, rise in water. When it floods, you can't do anything about it, so you need to, as much clear flow as possible. So I appreciate y'all and everybody who worked on this. Thank you.
Bears?
Thank you. I guess the first part is for Mr. Wainwright. So the way we're going to assess all the laterals and do them in the order that they need to be cleaned, I guess.
So we're working with the districts to identify places where they know they haven't been able to get to. That's the first thing. So many of our laterals are, you know, they have right of way, and they're a lot more maintenance normally takes place on them. So the focus is major laterals where that's not the case. And we just continue to identify them. This is our first year at it, so we're kind of learning how this is going to go. We're going to see how the prices turn out and see that how we can continue the program. It's really about some sort of cyclical maintenance effort on these to keep them, you know, as open as possible again, so we can get our crews up there that monitor our gauges. We can get engineers up there if we're doing a project. For whatever reason, we can easily access these laterals this way. And like Myron said, just really, you can't get to them any other way, so we need the path to be open.
So you're going to have, these are obviously capital projects. They'll be identified yearly, and then, and with all this information, we have the ability, like he said, to expedite this process. So we're not talking about identifying it and 2 years later it gets fixed. We're gonna, I mean,
Yeah, yes, sir. Ideally, we'll each winter, when you can fly this stuff and really get the best look at everything, would be the ideal time. And as long as there's projects in need, we see this as a tool that we'll have and continue to use as long as there's a need. So,
good deal. Thank you, sir.
Scott?
Applaud the effort, of course, but some of the things that several gentlemen have brought up along the way is starting south and moving north. And if they were here tonight, they'd probably be like, well, it looks like you're moving water further south as fast as you can, and you hadn't fixed anything south. Now, I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm just saying, so how have you quantified the fact that you're doing these projects that seem to be mostly north? And with that, have you also quantified the aspect of, is there a lot of repetitive loss going on in these areas, or is this just strictly to move water? Because, I mean, I would hate to just move water if we're not, you know, fixing a problem other than moving water.
well, the laterals that we chose, the first set here, kind of like Mr. Shalen just mentioned, you know, they empty into major water bodies, Calcasieu River and things like that. So really not passing through a lot of other people. They're in the north part of the parish, but, you know, we're working really where they enter a major river system that is hard to impact. And these aren't the biggest of drainage flow projects. They will improve flow. You saw the trees, you saw the dam, so they do help. But really, we're trying to access these for future studies to be able to get out there and make sure these little blockages, you know, in a major flood, the water on some of these bayous might rise 6, 7, 8 feet over all those banks that you see there. So really, at the end of the day, it's improving flow, but that's not the design of these projects. It's really to have access, to be able to go and look at future projects as your master plan comes, you know, more into play in terms of projects. If we're looking for, if it's regional attention or whatever, we need to be able to access it and put our gauging system along these routes so that we can really model it and study it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The question was along those same lines about what the net negative effect downstream is going to be. I know the ones that are going on the west in wards 5 and 6 are mainly dump in, I guess, into the Houston River. And at one point there was a lot of questions about the debris that was down on Houston River after Hurricane Rita. How much of that has ever been cleaned up, and will we ever be able to do the same kind of work in Houston River that we're doing inside the district laterals?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the answer to how much was done or not done. I remember the projects that were floating around, and we'd have to discuss that with those districts that were working the projects at the time. So I can't really answer to that, but These projects won't be going along pulling stuff out of the bottom, trying to find, again, we're looking for really the big snags that are hanging off of the edges and the things that are blocking access. The scope of a project on Houston River to attempt that in the test projects we've had around Calcasieu Parish would be so huge. And we would truly have to vet the effectiveness of just clearing debris that's well submerged under a major lateral, and what's it really going to change. So part of our modeling effort attempts to address that and look at those concepts, but until we have really firm reason to approach that kind of project, we would say hold off on that kind of scope.
I guess as you're coming down these and you're clearing them out, you'll profile the bottom and find out what underwater looks like just as well as the top of the water.
Yeah, I don't know that we have the equipment. One of the things you approved recently is for the police jury to be able to do that. We are getting more and more into the ability to profile our bottoms, just like that, so that we can pull either some sort of sonar or radar system all the way up these laterals and truly get that kind of thing done. But the first thing is access. I know I've said it a couple times. We have to just really be able to get all the way easily so we can let those kinds of projects go forward.
I just want to make sure that we're not creating a problem for somebody else that exists in one area and we're just kicking the can down the road, that we don't have some method of going in and analyzing what kind of work can be done all the way through the system, and not just in the gravity drainage laterals. So,
like I say, this is.
I agree with Mr. Scott that it's a huge factor, and you can't just kick the can down the road. So, thank you.
Like everybody else said, thanks to everybody for the effort y'all put into this. It's very creative the way y'all have used the drones to map out all the laterals and everything else. The only negative thing that I see coming out of this is I'm gonna have a bunch of family members calling me that you ruined a bunch of their fishing holes, to be honest with you. But it is a great effort y'all doing, and I appreciate it, because we all talk about drainage and the access to laterals and everything else, and it's the main arteries for everybody. I mean, everybody talks about the main rivers and trash in there, but it's the arteries that clog up before. So I appreciate everything that everybody's put into this. By you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Scott?
I did have one other question, and this gets towards the economics of it. So I know when we approved this, we kind of had some budget ideas what this might look like, but so we have a pretty good idea that we have multiple contractors that are going to be able to do this work, because if we got one or two, I'm a little worried just looking at the pictures what these numbers could come back. So how is the feel from the contractors locally or close by that think this is doable at a cost-effective manner?
Well, one of the things we have been working with local contractors to identify the best way to contract this kind of work. We have contractors that are working in other states that are from here. They go off and do this kind of work. So we have sat down with our ideas and our plans to. That's part of the reason why we ended up spending the effort here into drone and to get good photography, so we could quantify to them what we expect or need done or included in their bids, and so that there's not a big misinterpretation. So I don't know off the top of my head what Terry ultimately put in the budget for these kinds of projects, but if on a line-by-line item, but if it turns out that they're well over budget, and we'll just have to stop and recalculate and see what we have to do there. But we feel like we have done as much due diligence as possible to create a bid that the local contractors will pick up on. Initially, we feel like very confident we'll have at least one good bid, but we'll see how that goes. This is a new kind of work in our area, and there's a lot of work going on. So we're just going to have to go through the process and see where it takes us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 10, consideration of adopting resolutions accepting the following projects as substantially complete. A, Calcasieu Parish
So moved.
Project
Both
number
bullets.
Second.
2017-14, Parish Bond Road Bridge Replacement Project, and B, Pine Hill Cemetery Road. I have a motion by Mr. Latour and all bullets, and second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 11, consideration of accepting Copper Ridge subdivision
Second.
located off OJ Road in Ward 3. Have a motion by Mr. Brain and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 12 is an advised item that the alcohol-free family zone, the zone, will be held in the parking lot on Rhine Street between the Charleston Building and the Parish Courthouse on Tuesday, March 5th, 2019, from 12 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. Discussion
On number 12.
on number 12? Okay, Mr. Guillory?
Just want to invite the public to come out to the alcohol-free zone. It's going to be popcorn, rides, DJ, and several other things. And Mr. Summers, would you like to say anything on that, Mr. Summers? So the people watching will have a chance to see.
Chairman Mayo, members of the police jury, thank you for allowing us to have this event each year. This is our 11th event that we've had, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. As it gets bigger, we've enlisted the help of facility maintenance and Dean Kelly and Tom Hafer and Laura Heller with their group about getting the word out. It's going to be the same things that we have, each year. We'll have the train rides and hot dog crew, and Pops and Rockets have come on board, and Sergeant Anderson with State Police will be bringing out his impairment goggles. Sheriff Mancuso's is providing the security. So it's gotten to be a big community event. I even heard that we're going to have sunshine on Tuesday. It's going to be a little bit chilly, but the sun is supposed to shine on Tuesday. So it's going to be a big event from 12 to 4, right on the parade route on Fat Tuesday. So it's an alcohol and tobacco-free event, and it's good for families to come out and young children to come out with the bounce houses and just have a good, safe time on Fat Tuesday. So.
Thank you, Mr. Summers, you and staff and everyone for doing such a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Mill. Mr. Summers, one of the things that a couple of the jurors had been inquiring on was the dunking booth. They had 3 names that was up to be put into it, Mr. Brian Beam, Mr. Dane Bolin, and yourself. Is that something that we can look forward to for this Tuesday, for this Fat Tuesday?
Well, sir, if you order it, I'm going to defer to Mr. Beam and Mr. Bolin on that, sir, and maybe they could answer that question for you.
Because I know a couple of jurors was actually saying, we definitely want to be there, if that's going to be there.
But if you want me to be in the Dunkin' booth, I'll be in the Dunkin' booth.
You guys do a great job. Thank you, Mr.
sir.
Summers.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Number 13 is another advised item. The annual rabies vaccination clinic will be held from 7 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock p.m. in Sulphur at the West Calcasieu Arena on Saturday, March 16, 2019, and in Lake Charles at the Burton Coliseum on Saturday, March 30th, 2019. Any discussion? Mr. Latour.
Yes, I wanted to possibly bring Mr. Nathan up. This was a huge success the last few years. Everybody remembers they put up the videos and showed how many people and the time capsule, and it was pretty interesting to see how many people showed up for that. So if you give us a little brief, we can put as much advertisement and stuff out for everyone. It'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Nathan Areno, Director of Animal Services. We do have our software clinics going to kick it off this year on the 16th. And last year, I think we did something like 2,400 animals at that clinic alone. The prices are $8 if your animal's altered, $10 if it's unaltered. And for those that don't know what altered means, it means fixed, basically. So we're giving a little price break if your animal's already fixed. And so we also offer microchipping. And it's a very efficient way to get this done, a very safe way to get this done so that you can not have to have your animal exposed to other animals. And a lot of people won't know, why is it drive-through? Well, most animals go by smell, and so the smells in the car are similar to the house, and it doesn't stress the animal out near as badly as standing in a line like they used to years ago and having all kinds of chaos and that sort of thing. So we're fortunate that with the West Cal and the Burton facility, we have a place big enough to host this. And if you haven't ever had a chance to go out, I encourage people to take advantage of it. And as a police juror or elected officials, whatever, it'd be great if you go through there too. And I guess the last thing I would say is it takes a lot of staff to get that done, and not just from our department, from other departments. It takes local veterinarians getting involved. It's a big animal that, in and of itself, that we have to fund and staff each year. And part of this is it really takes a proactive approach to rabies. And the reason we don't have a rabies epidemic is people are responsible each year and vaccinate their animals. And a lot of people don't understand why that's important, but a human contact and rabies could actually become dead in 3 days post-exposure if not treated. So it's a serious problem that we as a parish take very proactively, and it benefits our citizens. So it's kind of one of the things as police jurors that you guys do is help us be able to do that, and it prevents a problem from happening that could have serious repercussions.
Awesome, awesome. Just out of curiosity, is there, I know it takes a lot of staff and manpower to work this event. Do you allow volunteers or anything like that, just out of curiosity? Or?
We do. A lot of times we have vet students and kids working on independent studies for universities come out and assist us in that effort.
All right, well, I do appreciate your time, sir. I appreciate all the effort that you and your team put together on this. Thank y'all. Yield back.
Any other discussion? Any objection?
Move to
Motion
adjourn.
carries.
Second. Committee meeting is to formulate an agenda for the regular meeting of the police jury on March 7th, 2019. I need a motion and a second to
moved.
pull number 16.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. White. Item number 16. Take appropriate actions on the terms of the following members of various boards and districts. A, Calcasieu Public Safety Communication District.
Move
One.
to reappoint Ms. Susan Facilio and Mr. Mason Lindsay.
Second.
Mr. Brain moved to reappoint.
Yes.
Reappoint Ms. Susan G. Facilio and Mr. Mason Lindsay, and I have a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion will carry. B, Southwest Louisiana Regional Planning.
Move to reappoint
Commission.
Mr. Wes Crane.
I have a motion
Second.
by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Latour to reappoint Mr. Wes Crane. Legal counsel, does that require a vote? Does that require a vote? Okay. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. C, Ward 4 Fire Protection District Number 2.
Move
One.
to appoint Mr. Jeremy Burton.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris
Second.
and a second by President White to reappoint Mr. Jeremy Burton. And number 2, Mr. Dale Hernandez.
Move to reappoint Mr. Dale Hernandez.
Second.
I have a motion also by Mr. Barris to reappoint Mr. Dale Hernandez and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? We do have discussion.
Number 12, number 1 on item C is to appoint, not reappoint. He's not currently on the board.
Correct.
Okay. Number
new-
1
new
is to,
appointment.
that's a new appointment?
He
New
is a
appointment.
new appointment.
He is a new appointment. Mr. Jeremy Burton is a new appointment. Make note of that, Ms. Jessica. I'm finding out just like you. Any other discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. D, Waterworks District Number 7 of Ward 4 and 6.
I moved to, thankful to Edwin Peterson for all the years of service, and this is his son Brock that I'm appointing to replace him.
Ms. Sandy is appointing
Second.
Mr. Adrian Brock Peterson, and I have a second by Mr. White. Is there any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. E, Waterworks District Number 12 of
Move
Ward
to defer
3.
to regular meeting on June 6, 2019.
I have a motion by Mr. Brain to defer and a second by
On
Mr.
June 6.
Scott to defer till
June 6.
June 6.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Any objection? That motion will carry. Is there any further business at this point? Seeing none, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second.